Keep right with Ralph K. Ginorio. Adieu, l'Ancien Régime. Goodbye, old order. So said French revolutionaries as they overthrew the Bourbon monarchy and began their own bloody experiments in building a republic of virtue. These Jacobins were consumed with enthusiasm to destroy all that had been in Louis XVI's France, so that they might replace it with something that they were certain would be better. Often, as also happened in Russia and China, idealistic revolutionists replace a flawed old order with hell on earth. Occasionally, such bold measures to improve our lot are tempered with humility and wisdom. Christianity makes possible such humane transitions. The evolution of the English constitutional monarchy and the American Revolution are the classic examples of beneficial and long-lasting political and social change. Louis XVI's monarchy, Tsar Nicholas II's absolutism, and China's early 20th century chaos were all so simultaneously incompetent, ineffective, and brutal that the damage which they often inadvertently inflicted became too traumatic for their victims to bear. The risks of change had become eclipsed by the pain of remaining constant. So it is with today's so-called rules-based world order. This leviathan of unelected bureaucrats and their plutocrat patrons has presumed to seize control over all human beings everywhere for their own good. Beginning with the idealistic good intentions of avant-garde late 19th century intellectuals and the political successes of European social democrats and American progressives, the concept of an intelligentsia engaging in widespread social engineering was pioneered. Even before World War I, a world court, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, was established at The Hague in the Netherlands. After this 1914-18 war, the Treaty of Versailles included the League of Nations, thanks to American progressive Woodrow Wilson. Accompanying this early attempt at shackling nations into a pan-national system, in 1920, the Permanent Court of International Justice also began sitting in The Hague. After spectacularly failing to either keep the peace or prevent atrocity, these bodies were replaced by newer versions after World War II and the final solution. The United Nations Organization, the International Court of Justice, and the International Criminal Court, the latter two both meeting at The Hague, have all jockeyed with national governments for control since 1945. Also after 1945, entities such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and Interpol, the International Criminal Police Organization, have proliferated. These work within, alongside, and beyond the free world's post-World War II defense and alliance systems, chiefly the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Countless non-government organizations have grown up to benefit from the funding that such international agencies spend to promote their agendas. They work in concert with fellow traveler politicians, including America's Democrats and institutional Republicans, European Social Democrats and Christian Democrats, including Britain's Conservative Party, and much of the George Soros coalition of international socialists. Europe coalesced after World War II into a microcosm of this new transnational order with the European Steel and Coal Commission of 1951, the Treaty of Rome's European Economic Community of 1957, the Schengen Agreement's erasure of borders in 1985, and the Maastricht Treaty's European Union of 1992. In doing so, unelected bureaucrats replaced elected leaders as the key decision-makers shaping Europe's laws and Europeans' lives. Today, these international and transnational bodies comprise the backbone of the rules-based world order, sometimes also called the liberal world order. Many of my more conspiracy theory-minded friends simply call them globalists. It is arguable, if not certain, that this burgeoning rules-based order was useful in managing but not winning the Cold War. In the 1980s, it took dissenters from this lockstep political consensus, such as Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, and Pope John Paul II, to break the stalemate and actually win the Cold War. It is certain, after the fall of the Soviets and the First Persian Gulf War, that President George Herbert Walker Bush established the rules-based order as his vaunted New World Order. This interlocked latticework of treaties, financial streams, regulations, law courts, and behavioral norms would, Bush and his partners believed, manage human conflict after the 1990s legendary end of history. Bush led this international system in appeasing China's communists, even right after their bloody Tiananmen Square massacre of June the 4th, 1989. During the Great Leap Forward of 1958 to 1962 and the Cultural Revolution of 1966 to 1976, Mao Zedong's Chinese Communist Party had systematically destroyed every single social bond and institution that made civil life worth living. Traditional China had effectively been destroyed and its economy collapsed. However, thanks to the rules-based order, the very same mass murderers who should have lost power because of their atrocities were instead given such munificent wealth from decades of Western investment that they now pose a threat to every single regional neighbor. These tyrants were saved from overthrow, and they now threaten to assert global domination or start a third world war, all because European and American leaders assured investors that China was safe and that Western investment would liberalize these communists into becoming stakeholders in their rules-based order. None of this happened. None of this was ever true. Corruption on unprecedented scales thrive under this rules-based order, particularly under the auspices of the United Nations organization. Totalitarians were stabilized, consigning entire national populations to captivity. The New World Order would see the West decline gracefully, its advocates thought, and new global powers would arise from the Third World and inherit this system to use as their own. Not the elites, though. A pan-national technocracy would be established after a great reset, bringing the planetary population under a common regulatory system. In this system, according to the World Economic Forum, non-elite civilians will own nothing, yet will still be happy. These very rules-based systems are now being used to stifle dissent and establish unpopular universal structures which will manage restive first world populations in Europe, Canada, the United States, and elsewhere. These new international structures prioritize environmental sustainability, refugee resettlement, and honestly, guilt over the West's preeminence over the last couple of centuries, over the will of the citizens of the developed world. This makes the rules-based world order as great a threat to peace and freedom as the Chinese Communist Party. It must be thoroughgoingly deconstructed. Adieu, l'Ancien régime. My French is terrible, but my passion is real. Like the conservative leaders of Reagan's time, President Donald J. Trump and his second administration seem to be purposefully undermining and demolishing this rules-based order. In Iran, Venezuela, the United Nations, Greenland, NATO, the European Union, the non-government organizations and their funding, military expansion, negotiations with the Russians, and preparations to defeat the Chinese communists, Trump is acting unilaterally and against the elite's rules. His goal is not a gentle sunset of America and the West. It is instead the triumph of a revived Judeo-Christian Western civilization within and beyond the United States, which will preserve the nation-state, freedom at home, and security abroad. We should each do what we can to help him in this absolutely necessary fight. Thank you for listening.